Hello and welcome to the Pacific. Name belong me, Johnson Raela.
Malo e la malie a ho eki pe mo lele ai kainga Pasifika hono kotoa. I'm Alice Lolohea. It's been a big week across the region, so let's check out what's coming up on the show. Could Manasseh Sogavare soon be Prime Minister of Solomon Islands again? We cross to Honiara next.
What does the outcome of Australia's federal election mean for the Pacific?
And we head back to Vanuatu to check in on the rebuild progress post-earthquake.
It will be better, but it's going to come slowly.
In Solomon Islands, a political showdown is looming. The man some have dubbed the Master of Mayhem, Manasseh Sogavare, has resigned as the Minister of Finance and is among a reported 26 MPs now poised to form a new coalition and unseat the current Prime Minister, Jeremiah Manele. The new coalition is an ultimate assembly of solo political power, featuring Manasseh Sogavare, former PM Gordon Darcy Lilo, Peter Kenaloria Jr. and longtime opposition leader Matthew Wale. These politicians have rarely seen eye to eye in the past. Mr Sogavare and Mr Wale in particular have fought many heated battles.
The whole thing is about the leader of the opposition and who else on the other side of the house wanting to be Prime Minister. That's what it is!
He's a con man. He has been, a very deceptive Prime Minister, very deceptive leader.
A leadership deficiency syndrome.
Which makes this an interesting and unpredictable partnership. May 2nd will mark current Prime Minister Jeremiah Manele's first full year as Solomon Islands Prime Minister. Mr Manele has faced a no-confidence vote last December, which was later abandoned. Mr Manele has so far ignored calls to resign and says he will face the motion slated to take place on Tuesday. For more, let's go to Honiara now, where our reporter Krishnarita Omanuleong is standing by. Hello, you, Chrissy. Me happy to mass for looking you again.
Hello, you, Johnson. Thank you, Thomas, for having me. And I must say, lovely, beautiful necklace you have on there. Thank you for paying homage to the shell money dwellers of Solomon Islands.
Now let's get into it. Manasseh Sogavare has held a press conference outlining the reasons for the move. What did he say, and does he want to be Prime Minister?
Look, a lot has been happening this week for sure. Mr Sogavare, who was once part of the ruling government, handed his resignation this week. He walked across to join the opposition and the independent bloc side, along with 9 other MPs and backbenchers. Now, on the very same day, we saw the Deputy Prime Minister also resigning from his ministerial position to a backbencher role in the current government. Now, in addressing media for the very first time since then, Mr Sogavare has put the blame on Prime Minister Jeremiah Manele. He's said, it's his decisiveness and weak leadership that's led to the fallout. He particularly pointed out disagreements by some of the members who were part of the government coalition led by Prime Minister Manele, saying that some of their grievances or concerns were not being addressed by Prime Minister Manele. Mr Sogavare had also dismissed claims that his resignation from the government side is linked to any Prime Minister bid.
Now, Chrissy, of the 26 MPs that have come together to form this coalition, we know that Mr Sogavare and Mr Kenaloria Jr. don't see eye to eye on relations with China, and longtime opposition leader Matthew Wale called Mr Sogavare a con man. How are we now seeing these men working together?
Look, that's the biggest question that come to mind for many Solomon Islanders. Earlier this week, a photo had emerged showing 25 MPs made up of Mr. Sogavare with the 9 who had switched from the government and the opposition and independent blocs. And we saw them sitting also on one side of the parliament, where the opposition leader had asked Prime Minister Jeremiah Manele to step aside as Prime Minister. Now, Prime Minister Jeremiah Manele said he won't step down and that he's committed to his leadership. Since then, we have just heard from the mover of this motion, former Prime Minister and the member for Central Honiara, Gordon Darcy Lilo. In a press conference, he sees this new coalition, though, as the alternative government. The group are claiming that they have 26 MPs in numerical strength. In the current parliament, 49 members, and they need absolute majority to pass the motion on Tuesday right behind me here at the National Parliament in Solomon Islands. But of course, the question still remains whether or not these members will iron out some of their differences.
Now, the vote of no confidence will take place on Tuesday, and in a world of politics, 4 to 5 days, that's an eternity. Is there a chance that Manele might survive?
Look, there is quite a few days still remaining when it comes to that, and with them claiming that they have the numbers and the numerical strength right behind me on Tuesday, we will know for sure what the answer would be when the vote of no confidence happens. But, you know, different scenarios spring to mind. The situation at this stage is so fluid for us to really do guesswork. So, John's, the best possible answer there would be we'll have to patiently wait for Tuesday to find out whether or not Prime Minister Jeremiah Manele survives.
Thank you too much, Chrissy.
Thank you, Thomas Johns.
To Vanuatu now, where 6 weeks ago we brought you a half-hour special from the aftermath of Port Villa's worst earthquake in living memory.
We're pleased to report there's been some positive developments since then, so we checked in with residents and businesses to see how things are going. Lily Rose Waldwell reports from Vanuatu.
Port Vila is starting to look more like its usual self. News of last year's earthquake did little to deter these tourists.
We love snorkeling, so I mean, look at the water. The snorkeling here is incredible, so good. It was a chance to maybe help out the local community, like buying gifts, because obviously it was once in a generation earthquake.
Yeah. The anti-craft markets, an important source of income for many women here, have reopened.
It feels good to see everyone coming back after the earthquake, and now it's getting better.
They're all called Vanuatu Port Vila, and it floats as well.
We have to get two.
Yeah, I know.
Vanuatu's tourism office says demand for holidays have stayed strong despite the December quake.
Tourism is the lifeblood of Vanuatu's economy. We have to ensure that we promote Vanuatu as that fun, adventure, cultural destination. Visitors are coming to the country. It's the operators in Santo and Tanna and the outer islands that are still struggling, if I may say. They're open, they're operational, they're not getting that volume that they would be getting pre-earthquake, pre-Air Vanuatu times. This is because they're still challenged with domestic connectivity.
Demolition works are progressing steadily and swathes of the town are ready for redevelopment. In March, the Pacific highlighted concerns that Vanuatu's National Building Code wasn't enforced on several partly damaged China-aided projects, including a high school and the presidential palace. It attracted backlash from the Vanuatu government. The International Federation of Journalists, the organization representing journalists at the United Nations, hit back, reminding the government of the media's duty to report on stories in the public interest. Since then, the government has promised a revised building code and stricter enforcement, something welcomed by residents.
Due to the earthquake I'm just suggesting that if the buildings they build will be safer than before, yes.
I believe that the government has already worked on that to employ or ask a construction company or foreign governments to come over to build a better, robust building in town.
While some businesses remain closed, many are thinking about the future. One hotel group is seeking proposals from international architects to rebuild chandeliers on the bay, a mainstay in the city's tourism economy.
So we've had a few proposals received, mostly from New Zealand, but not only. We've had also Australia, we've had Fiji, and we have even had from Thailand.
They want the hotel to be up to 40 rooms, larger and an improved hub for tourists.
I'd like to see Port Vila becoming more like as a tourism city. There's a lot of things to think about it. And we will also probably call for proper, town planning and architects to redesign the town center.
The main road through town has reopened and is receiving an upgrade thanks to a grant from China. The period of regeneration has also given people time to reflect on how they want the CBD to be rebuilt. Some are calling for it to be more pedestrian-friendly.
Pedestrianizing the Port Vila Main Street CBD is not only offering businesses the opportunity to attract more customers, but for both visitors and local to meet each other and say hello, bonjour, ça va, and mingle with each other.
This cafe relocated to the suburbs after more than 30 years in town, and its owner says many others were hunting for a new location.
We were hoping that the town would be opened quicker. We just kept on going and waiting. There was no help from the government. Hello. People can sit here, people can relax, people can forget what happened. I think it's just a miracle. Then we got this place. And, sorry.
Despite the progress downtown, across the bay looms a major roadblock to full recovery. A landslide is still blocking the international wharf.
What used to be a 5-minute drive down to our work site, now it requires a sort of a 45-minute plus boat ride to get back.
At the moment, the country lacks the expertise and equipment to clear the landslide. The Prime Minister's office did not respond to our questions about how recovery efforts are progressing.
Even though the disaster was localized to Port Vila itself, it will be felt in the islands of Vanuatu. The domestic shipping, we're the lifeline for communities in their outer islands, and that's everything from fuel, all of the goods that are coming from Port Vila, and also goods from the islands coming back to be exported.
Despite the challenges, people are still optimistic about the future of their city.
It will be better, but it's going to come slowly. And it's going to be more than before. That's what I'm most optimistic about.
Australians are about to head to the polls for a federal election, and the outcome will almost certainly have an impact on the Pacific. This week, the Coalition announced that if elected, they'll provide an additional $2 billion in loans and grants through the Australian Infrastructure Financing Facility for the Pacific. The Labour Party, on the other hand, are yet to announce any new plans for the Pacific, but since taking office in 2022, the Albanese government has continued to strengthen Australia's Pacific relationships, embarking on a wide range of new initiatives.
Well done. Very good to see you.
The new Australian government is committed to bringing new energy and new resources to the Pacific.
When the Labour Party took office, they promised to re-engage the Pacific and rebuild the trust they said had been lost.
It was at a very low ebb in 2022, and part of that was just the alienation that our Pacific Island neighbours felt from Australia's policy on climate, our policy on foreign relations, and the way that we dealt with our fellow members of the Pacific family.
In the last 3 years, Foreign Minister Penny Wong has led an unprecedented travel blitz.
I've now visited more than every member of the Pacific Island Forum.
And with the trips came a raft of new spending and commitments aimed at staving off China's growing influence in the region.
Who's going to win over the Pacific?
I hope the Pacific wins in this sense.
Australia's aid to the Pacific has been increasing, with a focus on development, climate finance and regional security. There were major announcements around security cooperation, policing, banking agreements and improvements to the PALM scheme. And in a world first, Australia and Tuvalu signed the Whalepili Union Treaty, which created a pathway for Tuvaluans to migrate to Australia to escape the impact of climate change. But It also gave Australia veto powers over Tuvalu's security arrangements.
This treaty is groundbreaking and unprecedented, and the first of its kind in the Pacific region.
And Australia agreed to a landmark $600 million agreement to establish an NRL team in PNG.
If there is anything that unites our country, it is rugby league. Politics divide.
But there's a catch. Security is once again at the heart of the deal, which prioritises Australia as PNG's primary security partner.
Australia, under the terms of the agreement, has the ability essentially to pull the plug then on the NRL team and the funding that comes with that.
This has secured Australia's security for the long term.
Okay, so lots of big announcements, a lot of new spending, but Alice, there's still a feeling more could be done on the issue Pacific leaders say matters the most.
That's right, Johns, and there's a growing divide between the two major parties, especially on a key issue impacting the Pacific, climate change. The topic has taken a bit of a back seat in the minds of many Aussie voters in this election, but Australia's next moves on climate policy will be vital to the future of our Pacific relationship. Many Pacific nations see climate change as their most pressing threat, and Pacific leaders have not been shy in their criticism of Australia's climate policies. Both of Australia's major parties have committed to net zero by 2050, but their approaches to climate policy are varied. Since taking office in 2022, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has strengthened commitments to reducing emissions and continued to invest in renewable energy. The coalition, meanwhile, has promised to review Labour's policies and is instead planning to build new nuclear power plants to bring down emissions.
We're not going to reach our net zero by 2050 targets without nuclear.
Australia has always been part of our Pacific family. We all know that Australia contributes a lot in the emission of greenhouse gases. So I think it's very important that we look at the relevance and also the impacts of Australia's climate policy from that perspective.
Many Pacific leaders want Australia to commit to phasing out fossil fuels entirely, which neither side has committed to do. Still, as the election looms, some Pacific leaders have expressed concern about Peter Dutton's commitment to climate action. The opposition leader recently labelled a joint Australia-Pacific bid to host global climate talks in 2026 madness.
Peter Dutton's comments serve only to open up more uncertainty and question the nature of our friendship. For the Pacific, this is not about politics or an election cycle. It's about the survival of our lands, our cultures, our people, who are facing the grossly unfair burden of climate impacts.
Mr. Dutton also drew criticism when he refused to acknowledge the role climate change can play in extreme weather events during a leaders' debate.
I don't know, David, because I'm not a scientist and I can't tell you whether the temperature has risen in Thargomindah as a result of climate change or that the water levels are up.
He later clarified that he does believe in climate change and reaffirmed the coalition's commitment to net zero by 2050.
Seriously, bro, that can't be true. It's a cause for concern for Pacific leaders, for Australian leaders, and for leaders in the world.
Both sides of politics have worked hard in recent years to cement Australia's standing as the key development and security partner in the Pacific amidst a push by China to increase its influence. Pacific leaders will be watching closely for the climate policies of Australia's next government, and it could determine our standing in the region for years to come.
Climate change is not just a faraway future. This is a time to roll up the sleeves and act.
That's a bit of a snapshot of where things are at and what the two parties are promising. So as Aussies prepare to vote, many citizens across the Pacific will only be vaguely aware of Australia's federal election. But ask those same people about Australia, its people, its diplomatic presence and its development assistance, and you will almost always get a response and an opinion. When the Australian government delivered its budget earlier this year, Tonga stood out as a nation that saw a noticeable uptick in its aid. $70 million this year, up from $44 million. Reporter Marianne Kupu was on the streets of Nuku'alofa to speak with people about their wants and needs from Tonga's relationship with Australia. While all were aware of Australia's overall development assistance, perhaps unsurprisingly, few were aware Australia was about to head to the polls.
Do you know that Australia is having an election this weekend?
I'm not sure about it.
I don't know much about it, but I have heard about it.
A special thanks to the Australian government for providing this assistance. We are, as a Tongan citizen, I am truly grateful for your help and support to our people.
But some people here say development aid could be better spent by supporting communities more directly.
From my perspective, I've noticed that Australia has provided a lot of assistance, financial assistance. So some of our women experience domestic violence at their homes, but we can't actually bring that out into our parliament or address this issue. It's because we don't have any statistics of this. It would be nice if the Australian government would actually have more support into providing surveys into this area to see how we can better support our women.
I believe they should have more support in terms of the social issues here, like, family problems, domestic violence.
Sesmani Lokotui is the National Coordinator for Civil Society in Tonga. She says there's a disconnect between assistance coming from Australia and the actual needs of everyday people.
Unless we are on the same page in terms of what development looks like for our country, we really cannot help our development partners in the right direction.
Sesmani believes the government of Tonga needs to address debt and financial issues, and part of that is through better management of development assistance.
Say for an example, climate change, the biggest agenda on the table for the past 10 years. Everything else gets lost in translation. Every single time the communities try and apply for funding, it's got to have that climate change component, when in reality, climate security in Tonga is financial security. For so many years now, we've combated so many natural disasters, cyclones. We have yet to fully recover. So when they tell us, oh, we've given you seedlings, that's great. I love seedlings. It matches the conservation agenda. However, the bills do not get paid by the seedlings. Tonga is broke. I think that's the bottom line. Address the brokenness and we'll be fine.
And in Port Moresby, reporter Belinda Cotter found that people were very aware of Australia's role in development, but in terms of election watching, they have other priorities.
From the village woman's perspective, I'd say this: we have no idea.
PNG is the biggest recipient of Australian aid in the Pacific, around $700 million a year. Like Tonga, people here want their own government to ensure development assistance is helping them and not being misused.
We hear about Australian funds coming through our country, but we feel that it's like a tea train that only little is poured down to the remote areas.
We hear about the funds that they assist the country, but we don't know how it's spent, how the money goes.
From a Papua New Guinean position, I think Australia's assistance has always been welcomed, and I think a lot of it over the years, unfortunately, hasn't delivered the more sustained sort of impact or the developments within our country. Over the years, we've probably been a bit too dependent on overseas partners and overseas aid, when we really should be putting more pressure on our own PNG government to be able to honour its obligations to provide those services.
Okay, enough about Australia, because Alice, Donald Trump is once again making headlines in the Pacific.
Yes, Johns. President Trump has been signing a flurry of executive orders in his first 100 days in office. And this week he signed an order to accelerate deep-sea mining projects. In a move some claim could boost the US's GDP by $467 billion over 10 years, President Trump wants to fast-track permits for seabed mining to secure critical minerals for clean energy technologies. The president says his executive order will unleash America's offshore critical minerals and resources and establish the US as a global leader in responsible seabed mineral exploration. The order directs federal agencies to issue exploration licenses in national waters and beyond national jurisdiction. which hints that the US may be looking to mine in international waters, including the mineral-rich Clarion-Clipperton Zone. Since 2014, the International Seabed Authority has been developing mining regulations alongside member states, including Pacific nations. Trump's executive order could now speed up that process. Many Pacific countries are supportive of seabed mining, but others worry the environmental impacts are not well understood. According to the US, the order also claims to counter China's growing influence over seabed mineral resources. China has responded saying,
"The above-mentioned acts have once again exposed the unilateralist approach and hegemonic nature of the US side in its sole disregard for international law and international order."
And as Pope Francis was finally laid to rest in the Basilica di Santa Maria Maggiore in Rome, millions of people watched on from afar. In fact, in Timor-Leste, hundreds of thousands of people gathered to farewell the pontiff. Just last year, Timorese Catholics gathered in droves to celebrate Mass with Pope Francis in Sassuolo. But 7 months later, in the same village, the flock came to mourn their shepherd. Around 300,000 Timorese gathered in Sassuolo on the day of his funeral Mass, their last chance to honour the Pope before all eyes shift to the Vatican for conclave, the official election of the pontiff, which will begin on May 7. Two cardinals who will also be sequestered and voting for the first time in conclave, Cardinal John Ribat of Papua New Guinea and Cardinal Soane Patitapaini Mafi of Tonga. Both were elevated to cardinal in the early years of Pope Francis's papacy. Pope Francis himself was elected within 24 hours, so let's hope the cardinals won't be locked away for days or even weeks at a time. Beautiful scenes there from Timor-Leste.
Well, that's our show for another week. Whai aksia for watching.